In order to facilitate an outbound call center, a phone rep must be supplied with data. So let's assume everyone on this panel and everyone you work with holds themselves to the strictest standards of data that the call center company can put into place. How does that work in terms of what kind of data are you looking to acquire that will get you an interested consumer?
Okay. So first of all, I mean, when it comes to data, and especially in the call center game, we are not buying any data without the source URL. We need a source URL in order to call it, or we can always DNC it. But when we have a source URL, we feel more comfortable with calling it and knowing that it's not job data, because we are totally against job data because it's just going to incentivize the rep and it's going to incentivize the actual lead to, pursue school to further their career. So we try to keep the incentivizations at a minimum and really focus on education quality data, that data that we generate ourselves via various coverage paths that are focused more towards the education lead.
That being said, Chris, I want to get a little specific with what you guys are doing. You mentioned that you're doing EDU. So are you buying data that's broad-based that you're scrubbing against the DNC, or are you buying data that you have an existing business relationship with, someone who's already opted in to hear from one of your reps?
Good question. Actually, we produce all our data in-house. We generate all our own data. The reason why is we have our own media buying team, so we generate our data that way. We make sure that the data is not watered down, or our data doesn't go to trash. But going back to the job board data topic, I mean, a lot of these people are just, they're confused, desperate, and they're just saying yes to everybody that calls them. They're even thinking some of these schools calling them are actually offering them a job. And even with job board data, I think it's the easy way in for a lot of call centers just trying to wrap up. The reason why is because the contact ratio is so high. You're going to call a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of pickups because a lot of these people are thinking, hey, looks like this is a potential employer that's calling me. I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to answer this phone call and talk to them. And they'll say yes through the whole path, through the whole phone path. And really, at the end result, the lead quality isn't that good.
So, I'm going to get back to you in one second. Ryan, I want to ask you specifically on this topic because you guys operate a center also. I mean, philosophically, how do you, what is the best way to acquire data for an outbound operation?
To do it yourself.
Yes.
To completely do it yourself. I would never rely on outside data sources to continue fulfilling the high quality data that you need.
And has it been your experience that you're able to scale off of that?
Yeah, I mean, so with direct publishers and direct relationships and direct co-range offers, and maybe even your own sites that can generate your own data off of, you can scale it in-house.
All right, so Nick, you had mentioned before about certainly helping people out further upstream in the process. Have you had experience working with call centers with some of the source data, that they use to call outbound, to speak to individuals, and what's been your experience with working with those companies? How are they keeping their best practices in play?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I don't think the situation is great if you're not your own call center, right? Because there isn't full transparency.
But we've got to admit there's a reality that there's a large amount of companies that are doing this that don't have the capacity to generate their own data, but they still like to consider themselves companies that are worthy of driving high quality traffic or decent quality traffic for the call center. And so what I'm trying to get you to talk about is specifically what has been your experience working with those kind of companies, and what are they doing that might, and if anybody else has an opinion on that, what are they doing to make sure that their lead quality is as good as Ryan?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of these companies that we've worked with have been in business for a long period of time. So I don't think that they have trusted data partners, right? So it's almost like a house relationship that they've had for many years, and they're not kind of going out and being very expansionary when it comes to generating new data. They go with their trusted partners. I think the second concept has been, as compliance guidelines come in any industry, I think the partners we've worked with have been very quick to apply that to their own data generation techniques and making sure that if it's a certain messaging that's not allowed, that gets translated not just to a lead vendor but also to their own call center data operation. And I think the third thing that's been helpful is the technologies in education, whether it's the omni-able group, the four-line kind of products. They they've actually allowed, for transparency when it comes to, data generation. So we've had issues pop up where, we get a PDF sent to us and say, hey, there's somewhere along the line, this came through your pipes, and somewhere along the line, this data was generated, right? And we had no idea. So that's actually a really helpful tool for us. And so as much as it's kind of been a tough transition to kind of get used to that and start using it, at the end of the day, some of these tools are very, very effective in helping identify those data sources, and then everybody can self-correct.
The next thing I want to ask you guys about is that inevitably when you're working with individuals who are receiving outbound calls, at least occasionally there's going to be an AG complaint. So, as legitimate drivers of data, how do you deal with the Attorney General complaints? What are sort of the steps that you go through to prove that you've created a compliant consumer and you've talked to a customer that should be hearing from you? So take it.
Luckily enough, we haven't received a complaint yet. So, but just on the website, there has to be a very thorough terms and conditions on the website, and also a very clear conscience checkoff box for the opt-in as well. That has to be really put into place. But we're very lucky not to have an agent complaint as of yet, because we've been very compliant. The DNC list is constantly updated on a daily basis, monthly basis, and so forth.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the AG complaints, it happens whether it's opt-in or not opt-in. We've had an AG complaint, even if it's been opt-in, it's not hard to furnish an opt-in record with an IP address and timestamp and all the relevant information. As long as the privacy policy states that a third party can contact the person, then there's not going to be an issue there, and that's just the way that there's to deal with it.
So when you've had an AG complaint, you've had a fairly easy experience?
It's someone that doesn't remember filling out a form online, and we just have to prove it to them that they have.
Okay. Following that, what are some of the various tactics that you guys have seen on the other side? So, what if people who don't sort of play the game on the high end or highbrow point of view, what are some of those tactics that people who are lead buyers should look out for in terms of looking at companies who are buying their leads from those types of sources?
Really, it's transparency. They have to have a click path. They have to have some type of receipt, some type of paper trail, even click trail. So they really have to be transparent. There has to be great communications in terms of that.
Are we talking about in terms of data or other call centers?
Well, we'll get to, in terms of, their practices. God knows we have plenty of time. But we'll get to some of the practices in a little bit in terms of how they operate their center and, on the outbound calls. But this is sort of the last piece on data that I wanted to focus on. What are some of the practices that these guys are doing? You guys are generating your own data. But, what are some of the practices that advertisers or lead buyers need to worry about when working with some of the people who are generating leads in a more negative fashion?
Yeah, it's just, what I see out there all the time is job data. And it's just everywhere. And I know I've touched on this more than once, but job data is completely relevant when it comes to education, because someone that wants to go down the path of getting a better job knows that they need higher education. So in order to incentivize or a person to pursue higher education, they have to incentivize with a job. And that's, traditionally a lower quality lead. Just altogether.
For someone from the outside looking in and working with centers, you probably have a more expanded view on what's out there. Is there anything that these guys haven't touched on that you feel like you can expand on?
Yeah, I would just kind of double click into this concept of job data and the reality.